we're talking about pricing. Okay, so you got an AI native product that involves prompts, which involves token usage, which involves continuous fees for somebody. Now you got to put a price on that. The obvious answer is to do something consumption based, to say like, okay, for $20 a month, you get this tier, you get this many tokens or whatever. Unfortunately, people hate this. People hate this. The reason why is because tiering is innately complicated. If you got like 3 tiers, everyone's got to you got to understand the pricing structure. Well, I got 3 tiers. This much is this much is this, that kind of thing. There's some expectation that if you pay a lot, like for a premium level, that you're sort of going to be allowed to do what you want. And when you hit limits there, that's not great. So like no one on the pricing spectrum is happy with this. The little guys have to understand something that's more complicated than what they need. The big guys maybe want more than they feel like they can get. And so it just, when this is played out and tested, people don't like it. Okay. And you might think, well, this is kind of the nature of the beast. This is how it needs to be priced. Well, we've got a clear problem here. We don't have incentive alignment for customers and businesses. So we got to find a solution. That this implies that like SaaS-based pricing structures, per seat licensing, consumption-based pricing, we're going to have to find a new answer here that looks a little different than the ones we've had before, because customers increasingly don't like it. We know there's subscription fatigue, event horizon waiting out there where people are going to cut everything that's not completely critical. So we got to figure out a new answer.
So hold on. So I want to make sure we're clear on this. So consumption-based pricing, the biggest reason they don't like it is because it's unpredictable. So
so if you're a high volume user, you'd want a discount.
Right.
If you offer just one standard tier that ratcheted up linearly, no matter how much you used, people are going to be dissatisfied on one end of the spectrum or the other, or possibly along the whole thing. So it's very difficult. That becomes complicated. How many tiers do you have? How do you define each tier? You're actually making arbitrary judgments about where the cutoffs are. Anytime you do something arbitrary, anytime you are making arbitrary decisions, even about stuff like that, you are introducing a natural inefficiency. You're making a guess. And when you make a guess, you've become very inaccurate for some portion of that thing you're trying to capture. And when you do that, like you're basically introducing this much unhappiness into the results. So arbitrary is bad.
But so far, Claude is using consumption-based pricing, right? So you get the tokens, you buy tokens. The more tokens you need, the more you buy. And if you don't need a lot, then you buy less or more. So
there's a little caveat there, is they have models that they introduce continually that lower the consumption price of your tokens.
Okay.
So suddenly your stack of gold is worth a little bit more, but they still have the problem of the confusion and the complexity. Well, which model do I use? Which one do I really need? People aren't totally confident about the model they're using. I talked to a guy who loves using Opus. I'm quite sure that for what he's doing, he doesn't need Opus. He could use Sonnet. It would probably be just as good, if not maybe faster and cheaper. And now I think he could probably use Haiku.
Yeah.
But he's not going to go for that.
Why not? So Esther says, with Gemini, I never know ahead of time, and I don't like that. So there's that, gotcha, all right? Like, you don't know, you can find out.
Yep, you just pay what we tell you to pay.
Come to the restaurant, we'll show you the bill later. I don't like that either. And then
this said market value. It's $300.
I know. And then there's the value-based pricing, right? So year 1, you prove efficiency, saves money. Year 2, customer says, you already proved it costs this much. Why am I paying the same?
I don't understand that. Do you understand that? I don't understand.
Value-based pricing, I think it's like what value you get.
Well, in year 1, you prove that whatever efficiency your product offers saves that person money. In year 2, the customer said, you already proved it costs this much. Why am I paying the same?
So you save the money, that efficiency that he introduced saved the money. So why do you have to pay on the value again? Why can't
presumably they're using it continually and always getting that efficiency gain.
Well, so let's say it's $100, and then the efficiency they got, it's actually like they did it in $80. And then they're like, well, why can't I just pay $80 even though you save? So it's kind of like you are reinforcing the behavior that they may not, they don't see the big picture. It's like, well, we saved you money, you did all of this stuff, and maybe somebody has a better explanation. But
I think you actually are kind of touching on the real situation there. And I deal with this, and I know companies have to confront this. So let's say I've had Focus for years. It's $87 a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've sold it for so long at $87 a year, and that's your renewal price. Like, I might like to lower the annual renewal to $47. That might be something I'd want to do.
Okay.
But that would absolutely kneecap my recurring revenue. The idea behind that move would be to increase customer satisfaction and also make it an attractive thing for new business, new customers.
Okay.
They say, "Oh, I like this compared to other pricing models. I'm going to do this because that seems to more capture my value curve or my perception of the value curve." But unless you have the new customer onboarding and new customer acquisition to justify it, for almost any company that already has products and pricing out there, they would just be taking a massive revenue hit.
Well, so think about it this way.
It
Like,
would never change.
do you know how if you go to the dentist, right, and the dentist will say, listen, we can do this work with your nerve canal, and it's going to cost you $100 if I do it in basically, like, do you want to do it faster, or do you want to do it slower, right? Because we can charge you by the hour. Like, we can do it, and it'll cost you like $100, or it'll cost you $100 in 2 minutes. But and the customer's like, well, why do I have to pay you $100 for 2 minutes if you can give me an hour of your time and then just do my canal the whole hour? And you'll be like, I don't want that pain, because I want it to be done in 2 minutes, not a whole hour. So then instead of them doing $100 an hour, now they're doing 30 canals in that hour, and they're making all that money in that hour because the customer doesn't want that pain in the ass, basically. So the value-based pricing, I think people are playing with that. But with value-based pricing, if somebody tells me, well, why would I have to pay you, Chris, $1,000 for your website if your software now can do this, for $100? Well, because you've got all this experience to tweak it and do it. So once you offer the service, so it's kind of that's where I'm sort of playing with the whole value. But maybe I missed some point.
Well, let's talk about some real pricing that everybody can relate to.
Yeah.
SaaS pricing.
Right.
Per seat, recurring pricing, recurring annual pricing, we'll just say. Could be monthly, but we'll just say annual. And in this little discussion, in this kind of survey they did, the CEO of Atlassian says that he's not sure that SaaS pricing will survive the AI era without some changes. And I tend to agree with this, at least directionally. I think this is on point. We know from companies that have been doing SaaS-based pricing that there is a lot of dissatisfaction out there with the way those services work. It always gets more expensive. They add on features, but most of those features customers don't need. All those feature add-ons are really aimed at acquiring new customers, and yet the customers who are on retainer, they're paying for that largesse that is not even relevant to them. They already paid for the software. Presumably it already did what they needed. They don't need these feature add-ons. It's certainly not enough to justify the price of admission. So people don't like that. So here's what he concludes. He says it's not going to go away, but it needs guardrails. It needs usage limits, clear tiers, and bundled AI features. I actually feel like that kind of contradicts his earlier statement about them not wanting the tiers, because that's introduces complexity. It's hard to understand. You maybe have arbitrary cutoffs at one tier to another. He says per seat models aren't dead. They just need simple guardrails and some consumption elements mixed in. That's the safest world right now. If I take this in my interpretation of it, where I feel comfortable, it looks something like this: a low annual fee to be a member at this country club, we'll say. You pay a low annual fee, skin in the game, to be there. From there, you have consumption-based pricing based on what you use. You use the dining hall, so you will pay for the dining hall.
Mm-hmm.
You use the golf course, you will pay for that. You don't use the pool, you don't use the tennis courts, you will not be paying for those things. You paid to get in the door, you paid the door charge. It's a small annual fee, and then you paid for what you used. Whereas with the country club, an actual country club, you're paying for all the amenities, whether you use them or not. So I love what Sly in DC says. We are tired of subscriptions. You put that up there. Yes, you're not alone, man. Everyone is, and especially now with inflation running out of control, everyone's got to make decisions about the stuff they want to hold on to. And for me specifically, my niche is websites. It's out of control. It's out of control. Your people paying $200 a year for forms on their website. Like, what do you got? You got a contact form and maybe some service lead generation form or something like that. Is that worth that much a year? Probably not, gang. But AI is introducing the wrinkle here because, to use the AI tools, you have to pay tokens. So it's more pay as you go. So we're moving in a direction where we'll be able to pay for what we use. The trick is going to be to make pricing simple without getting into the tiering and the complexity of that. Like, oh, at this level, it's this much. At this level, it's this much. I talked about last week or the week before, I have what I think is the best solution here, or at least that I've come up with so far. And that is that like Claude, ChatGPT, Grok, they need to be able to have an intermediary or like an affiliate relationship with creators who put prompts in their software, who do embedded AI prompts. Through that arrangement, if you're using PageMotor, which has an embedded AI prompt, you could buy credits to Grok through there. You could buy credits to ChatGPT through there and credits to Claude. They would then pay PageMotor some percentage of that consumption-based usage. So you would always just be knowing their prices. It doesn't matter what PageMotor's cost is. You're just paying that price to get the tokens from the AIs that you're going to use. So you know what their structure is. You're only dealing with them. You're not dealing with PageMotor and having all these 50 software fees. You're just having your relationships with the AI, compute, and then PageMotor is able to get paid through that relationship, but that never really had to come up. It didn't have to come up in pricing that was presented to you. You didn't have to consider this extra layer. The only layer you had to consider was your consumption of the AI model, which to me seems really nice. We have to consider something. We have to consider our cost per action. If we can only consider it at the root point of the AI itself, that seems like the simplest possible way to like divvy this out among the entire landscape. But if we think we're going to be in some world where you're paying for like 6 different online services and the AI tiered AI charges for each one, not happening. Not happening. I've seen 3 products roll out recently, WordPress-based ones that do this. And I'm like, they're going to get a little bump for a short time because people are interested in this. And then it's going to fall off like a cliff.
So, okay, that's about like using AI for coding and stuff. What about AI as a service, the joke? Does it even make sense?
What's the answer to this? Does it even make sense? Yes, it makes sense because you continually query the AI and there's a cost per action, a cost per usage on that. If the AI is actually doing something for you, not just fetching facts or like chatbot, no. But if the AI is actually doing something for you, performing some function, building your website, creating some content, doing an SEO strategy, doing a social media content strategy and rolling stuff up for you, making a video. If it's doing those kinds of things, then that consumption-based pricing absolutely makes sense and is sort of an unavoidable thing. Something we don't think about enough is that we are already living in a world and always have been living in a world where you're paying for every little thing that you do. We just don't actually pay that way. We pay in big chunks. And then it actually gets, amortized out over the entire landscape. But every time you hop in your car, that trip you take in the car costs you some amount of money. It costs you in gas. It costs you in tire wear. It costs you in wear to the vehicle. It costs you in the road.
The tolls.
Very slightly damaged. And you pay taxes, that go to repairing those roadways and stuff like that. So there is some cost. You went to the coffee shop and you spent $6 there. The cost of the trip in the car might have been $2.17. You don't think about it that way. But that's certainly it was already there. So you had a cost per action there that you had already paid in gross through paying your car insurance, through having tires that were already put in your car, through paying for gas that you'd already put in your car. So you had a cost per action. You don't really know what it is because we haven't been on a perfectly granular consumption-based model before, but that was already there. And with AI, it's just more in your face.
So, and then I want to kind of pull back a little bit. like for example, I'm working on something where it's going to be like a product, right? That uses a lot of AI that for consumers. And so we were talking about like, how do we price for this? Right? Because we pay for AI access, we pay for all that stuff, and the user comes in and experiences the product that helps them, in their life. And so what we're focusing first is design first, and trying to understand like, can we truly help this user with the product? And then we're going to try the pricing. It has to be a subscription for now, because we got to keep optimizing, and the customer is using the AI, so the meter is running. But I guess we're going to have to reevaluate the margins once it's happening, because it's kind of like a wild west in a way. But but we're kind of starting with like, how do we solve the consumer's problem and then see how much will actually be worth it. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, so we're doing this great sorting right now where we're trying to figure out what works and what people will accept. I think in your case, what you are building would be seen as an essential level up service for certain types of people. I think that is a subscription they'd be willing to pay for. I also think it's one they're going to have a limited engagement, like for 3 to 6 months, and then probably spin out of that once they feel like they've got the value that they needed to get. I think the challenge becomes when, like, if you can look at that and say, okay, this is the life cycle of a customer. Here's what your likely lifetime spend is. That's actually really refreshing. I'll pay a subscription that I know is going to end. It's the ones that are open-ended, could last forever, that I don't like. I'm going to pay $100 a year for this website component. Well, is it going to go up to $200 a year next year? I've got all these other components. What's my spend going to be? It's going to go out of control. So I don't have a cap on that. That stinks. That's what people don't like. So I think we're going to see more things emerging where you say, okay, look, here's what it is. It's this much for 6 months. This is going to be your total cap spend. You'll have maybe some stuff we'll figure out, like games have already figured this out. You have ways for them to spend more once they're inside the app for these other level ups. And that's going to be we're going to see more of that happening in business.
Gamifying it.
Yep.
So what's the takeaway from this? Because this is a very practical way, like for those who are building products and services with AI, like what would you say is the biggest takeaway here?
Pricing has got to be simple. It's got to be simple, and it has to be honest. If you know that there is a cap on this, like we want to have infinite customers paying us infinite money forever, that's not realistic anymore, and that's dying. Subscription fatigue is real. The event horizon is upon us. You should prepare and plan accordingly. Now, simple pricing is a total win. It is really hard to do. It feels like a unicorn, especially when you have consumption-based stuff happening. So what you can do about consumption-based stuff is be super honest, or we could have some little new variable, such as the arrangement I described, where the people who have products that you use with prompts in them are actually getting paid by the big AIs, so you never had to really deal with that. All you did was pay for your cost per action. To me, that is by far the most palatable arrangement. You just know that when I use AI, it costs some little bit of money. I pay a toll. Great. At least I didn't have to think about all this other stuff. That is one avenue to simple pricing. But it's, so people need reassurances that the costs aren't going to spiral out of control forever. If it is an annual sort of arrangement, people kind of assume that the price is going to go up, and that's going to introduce a lot of uncertainty in their environment. Not good. And maybe this will result, like I already touched on this, but businesses getting a better handle on the life cycle of their customers. We got to stop viewing things as infinite. That's not realistic.
Yeah. I mean, it's good for business, not good for customer. I think that's going to be changing as well. And interesting. All right.
It's another point of differentiation. We talked earlier about like the AI model is not the differentiator. What is? Well, pricing models promise maybe number one point of differentiation in the future.
Well, unless you offer some kind of value what they can't really get anywhere else, then yeah. But like the whole point of even like today's show is the barriers getting so low to entry. How do you separate yourself? Like, how do you stand out, and how do you have people pay you money for something that they can go and talk to ChatGPT about? Or
well, I'm curious if the audience thinks this is more honest. To me, this feels a little more honest than like the annual fee kind of arrangement where you don't really know what you're paying for and probably going to be paying too much.
Yeah,
but let's say you have, like I said, the country club fee that's small. You pay to get in the door. It's a nominal amount. But then once you're inside the building, You have opportunities to, oh, if you want to do this, it will cost you this much. If you want to do this, like spell out clear outcomes, connect actions to outcomes. And then I think
Mhm.
people will be more likely to pay for these things. And it could be something that they volunteer to do a lot. Like, I want to actually pay for this outcome 26 times while I have the service.
Right.
But I'm not paying an annual fee. I'm paying every time I do it. So it is consumption based, but with a little bit of a twist. It's sort of like a hybrid of the way that games do it. Well, if you want to buy these enhanced items within the game, you can pay $5 or whatever. You're already doing the service. It's a small fee, one that's palatable to you. And now you're choosing what stuff you want to do to like add additional leverage to whatever you're getting out of this thing.
Yeah. Definitely lots to think about. So hopefully that sparked some kind of thinking for you guys with what you're building.